Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. I am thrilled today to have Jason Skeesick on the show. I used to live in Chicago as well, which I know you have a long history with. Yeah. Jason, you are the entrepreneurial evangelist. You are a podcast host as well as a guest, and you have done so much in your backstory. You're an Army veteran. You have a degree in finance. You've also owned a CrossFit gym. So please tell us about your journey and unpack it for us. How did that turn you into the entrepreneur podcast host and the entrepreneurial evangelist?
Well, I think ultimately, as much as it sounds like those were all disconnected lily pads along the way of my life, I think the through line in my life's journey so far in my book, since I was a little boy, I always get very interested and absorbed and passionate about those things that I like, and I try to make them what I do for a living. And so as a young man, I was into clothes and fashion. I worked at the mall. I was into cars. I worked at a shop. I was into snowboarding. I worked at a snowboarding hill. And in those days, I didn't know that that would lead me to be an entrepreneur, but through a circuitous path, it's obvious now in hindsight that I don't have any choice but to take action on the vision that I have for my future. So that's how we did it. And ultimately, the second component of that is through sports as a youth, and then the United States military, the Army, ultimately, again, CrossFit. And now what I do the other through line has been community and tribe. I just love going through it together, working through difficult things, whether that's solving problems in a business or working through a really tough workout. I just love the tribe and community. And so that comes along with me as well.
Fantastic. So what was the impetus originally? I mean, you talked a little bit about sports behind deciding to start CrossFit as one of your first entrepreneurial journeys for yourself.
Yeah. So it was no different. I spent 4 years in the military and had never heard of CrossFit at that time, although I had seen it. We served a special forces group, and that was very early in CrossFit. So some of the only people doing it at that time were these special forces guys and people out in California. And so when I got back, my friend that was in the Army with me and myself started doing CrossFit. And like everything else, we shopped around at some of the options in gyms, and he called me one day. I was on my way home from a rock climbing trip, and he was like, "Hey man, it's like $220 a month to join a gym. Why don't we just start one?" And I just said yes immediately. I didn't even think about it. And so like so many other entrepreneurs that started a business as a young man or woman, I never would have done it that way now, but I'm so glad that I did. I learned it. What we didn't have in money, we had in energy and attention. So we poured all of our energy and attention into that business for several years.
Well, and you have to start somewhere, right? Taking that first step and saying yes and starting, even if you didn't know all the things you know now, to start a business. So if you had to go back, would you change the way that you did anything?
No, but I didn't do it right? I mean, none of us did. There was 3 of us. Yeah, I didn't do it right. I think if I gave myself advice, I would have paid for mentorship and coaching earlier, because I think I was a victim of what I think so many entrepreneurs are a victim of. And that is, I have a unique vision, which means I need to make every single element of my business totally unique from other businesses. And so I'm trying to reinvent every single wheel and every single part of what business is, when ultimately it's really the brand, right? It's the brand and the fulfillment, and the rest I should have either sought out mentorship or paid for a course sooner, because I could have cut a lot of time off and helped more people.
I think we've all made those mistakes or life lessons, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So you talked a little bit about building your tribe and how that's helped you in your businesses. And before we got on, you also talked to me a little bit about how you don't have the gym anymore, but it helped you get to what you do now, which is coaching. So will you talk to us a little bit about that process of realizing that what you were offering and what you're doing actually was something bigger that could impact even more people? And then how does Tribe fit into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me and many fitness people, I love working with fitness people, even though I don't do it exclusively anymore, because fitness is one of the very few places that people that are entrepreneurs get into it because they love doing the job. People don't typically get into real estate, and not to disparage them, because they love being real estate agents. They don't get into wealth management manage it because they love investing in stocks. It's really the other stuff. But with fitness, what I find is people will spend sometimes their entire life in a career that limits their upward mobility because it's such a challenging career to be successful in. And so when I finally did hire a very successful person very early in his career named Alex Hormozy, he helped me through a company called Gym Launch. And then very quickly, we turned our business around. And not only was I able to be stable and happy and financially taken care of, but my tribe went 5x'd in a few years. And so because of that, I was helping so many more people. And I just couldn't help in the way that I never coached a class for my tribe, that I had less energy at the end of the class than when it started. It's the same way I felt as soon as he asked me to help him as a coach for his business and help other gym owners to find similar success. And so from there, I was hooked. From the very first call that I took, was just totally hooked on helping other entrepreneurs who see the world as it could be and help them to take action and actually get the traction that they had worked hard for.
Nice. What do you see as some of the mistakes that people were making that you were able to go in and say, oh yeah, I did this as well. And here's where you can make some quick corrections to get to up level? Yeah,
that's a great question. So for fitness, I'll address fitness, and then maybe I'll even address for the folks who I work with now mostly. To be honest, it's very similar. For fitness, it's if I'm just a better coach, if I'm the best coach in town, then my business will go where I want it to go. And so what they do is they focus on one of the 5 core elements of their business. So this will be someone who's never lost a client because they were a bad coach. They've never shown up late for a class. They have all of the foundational equipment that anybody could expect in their facility. And yet they're going to seminars and they're going and getting new certifications and they're pursuing their education. And that's not that those are bad things, but they've never run an ad, or they don't have any referral program, or they don't have any email campaign that reaches out when somebody hasn't come for 2 weeks. Some of them are collecting paper checks on a 30-day cycle. And so because of that, yeah, exactly. Oh, and the other big one there is they're unable to scale themselves. They're magicians. The magic is stuck between their ears, and they're unable to apply systems to hire and train other like-minded people. And so all of those things. So basically, I focus on the other 4 areas of the business and have really enjoyed those folks that take up that mantle and then can really bring to life the vision of what they wanted for their business and their tribe and their own lives.
Yeah. That's so hard because I think in any industry, there's always that shiny object syndrome, right? Like, oh, I should do that. I should do that. I want to pursue this and this and this.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I often say the messages that my guests are saying to my audience are exactly what I need to hear right now, because I'm also looking at like, oh, I want to do all these certifications. Yeah. I don't need any of them to do my job, but they're more nice to haves, right? They might give me that little bit of extra brand authority. But if I'm not focusing on the fundamental areas of my business, it doesn't matter what certifications I have or how many or whatever.
Do you know what I feel like that is? I feel like when we have like one thing holding us down, it's like we want to squirm in any other direction other than addressing that one thing, right? Oh, yeah. And I think so many times you've probably found the same thing. It's like when you talk to somebody who's struggling and you ask them, hey, what do you think that I'm going to recommend? How many times are they right? Because they know that I put all my time and energy here and I know that I should. And then whatever they say after should, that's the thing that they're secretly resistant to doing. And so often that's the thing that I help folks to do.
Yeah. It can be hard to focus on things when it's not your core area of expertise or your zone of excellence. Yeah. So you've been shifted to coaching and consulting for the past 4 years or so. So pre-COVID.
No, I was coaching and consulting for gym owners through COVID, which was, you want to go to the show. That's the World Series of coaching gym owners, especially brick and mortar, which was our specialty. And so my partner, Joey Huber, and I were just pulling out all the stops and doing anything we could to help people keep their businesses moving. And as far as I know, I can't think of any that I know of that were clients of ours that shut. That doesn't mean people didn't struggle, and maybe they've closed since. But as of the last I knew, we were able to help people keep it together. And some of them were in pretty dire straits. And some of them had unbelievable transformations by really leaning in and executing. And then I took about a year off when I sold that business to my partner when my daughter was born, Lucy. And then in November, I launched Spear and Clover, which is my own coaching company.
Fantastic. And congratulations on your daughter.
Oh,
I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I have a high schooler.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And it's all an amazing journey, every moment of it, Yeah.
Yeah.
So how awesome that you're just starting out on that journey and you have years ahead of you to enjoy that. And I think that's also something, right? We're all looking for that balance and that quality of life that wasn't necessarily what people strive for, thought of as success previously. We thought you have to go get that check, work that 9 to 5, just collect, but not actually do the things that will continue to inspire and motivate us to do what we're best at, to put our purpose into the world and to just enjoy being every day.
Yeah, that's meaningful stuff. I think I'm still figuring it out. I think too, it's such a hard thing. And I think moms have an equally or even more challenging thing, but I see this thing in men and fathers where it's like they need to grind themselves to the bone and at the same time show up as the man that they want to inspire their children with. And I won't speak to the women and moms. I could call Donna in here, but there's that other side of that equation. And I won't speak to it because I don't live it. But for fathers, I do know so many people that are like, yeah, my dad either struggled or even went to an early grave because he was working 16-hour days and his body was broken and all these other things. And then I see them walking in those shoes at the same time. And if I can do anything, it will be to help those moms and dads be able to show up for their family and be able to provide for their family.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you came back from the military, you're doing CrossFit, you decided to open a gym. My grandfather was a colonel in the Air Force. 2 of my uncles went to West Point. My dad and one of my other uncles was in the Army. My brother was in the Air Force. So I get all of that a little bit, just a little taste. But I often see or hear about veterans coming back and struggling to assimilate and figure out what they're going to do for their what next for work. But I also hear that veterans make great employees. Now, you've taken it to another thing and veterans as entrepreneurs. How have you been able to successfully apply that military experience? And how would you encourage, because I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, do you have a specific segment that works with military veterans?
First of all, that's a great question. I think of it as two. So I'm going to break it in half. I'm going to say first, to what do I attribute people's success that do leave the military and find success? And then second, sort of how I would engage with a military person now. First of all, I would love more military clients. That's easy. The first question, I think it comes down to this. I think people talk about discipline a lot, but I don't think there can be discipline without self-worth. And so what I mean by that is when I do something disciplined, I'm consistently putting pennies in the piggy bank of a future investment in me or my family or whatever it is. And I think that unless you believe that this stock will pay off, why would I continue to invest in that piggy bank? And so what I've found in the folks that I know from my military service, I won't put any words in anybody's mouth or what their life is like, but in my personal experience, when I was in the military, I had like a subscription to Forbes and I'm like reading self-help books and I'm reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so I was very much investing in myself, thinking I'm going into the military to sort of control, alt, delete the hardware and find some discipline and purpose. And I'm going to come out and just ruthlessly invest in myself and bet on myself as a stock. And I think at the end of the day, if you're hearing this and that does not resonate with you, then I would start small with action. But over time, the discipline will get easier because you'll start to see the dividends pay off in the results.
Nice. Very cool. And then the second part, do you have any clients currently who are veterans?
I have. I can't think of any that I'm currently working with that are. And to be honest with you, I'm embarrassed to say this is the first time I've considered actually like actively targeting veterans. But yeah, I love to work with veterans. I think part of it is the military is so opposite of entrepreneurship in so many ways, but in several ways, it's actually very similar. And so I'll give you one. For starters, you use SOPs. SOP is a military term, right? And so in order for the military to work, they need to have SOPs and training that are so perfect that anybody that can pass, I mean, like a minimum of like an 80 or a 90 or 100-point IQ test can do a vast swath of these jobs. And so like as an entrepreneur, I think it's tempting to like admire NASA or Tesla, OpenAI, these companies that are like hiring really brilliant people to do really enigmatic and like big jobs. But truthfully, I admire like McDonald's and the Army and places that have created systems where success is a foregone conclusion. And the cohesiveness and the communication through those places is just built in such a way that it couldn't fail. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. I find that when I have better SOPs and we're adhering to my processes, that we deliver better for our clients too, where it's not me being scattered going, okay, I hope this person is working on this part because I don't have time to oversee what they're doing. And, absolutely. It helps everybody on the team really understand what their roles are there's still room for innovation, I think, in that, but it also helps them understand, like, how do we approach the clients? What do we need to make sure we have answered before we start working with them so that we can make sure that what we're doing is really what they need us to be doing in this moment. Right. So,
yeah, and even problem solving, like you're describing, is very much trainable. And it's certainly not as easy as fries, right? But we can teach people sort of the way. I mean, I was fortunate, kind of by accident, but I was fortunate that I chose a job in the Army that I didn't do afterwards very long, but it was engineering. It was electrical engineering. And so because of that, man, I learned the Army's version of how to solve problems. And by golly, I solved problems when I was deployed. So just learning how to solve problems and teaching others now how to solve problems and just codifying what that looks like. It's surprising that it's a skill that we overlook. As somebody that gets things done, it's easy to overlook the actual meta-analysis of what you're doing when a problem arises that gets it done. So things like breaking it down, things like resources that I asked my mother the other day, I shouldn't say this, but I will. My mother rented a Tesla and she sat in the Tesla for like 25 minutes because she couldn't figure out the controls. And they're very different. Although I've never driven one, I've seen them, of course, and been in them. And I was like, did you Google it? And she goes, no. And I go, you sat there for 25 minutes and you didn't Google it? Again, Mom, I love you and you're an inspiration to me every single day. But that one moment, I'm like, oh, somebody never taught her. Like the very first thing you do is Google something, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I also imagine that your experience in the military also helped you understand how to build teams. I think that's another thing that as entrepreneurs, we have struggles with sometimes is making sure that we're identifying the right people for our team, whether that's personality, skill set, making sure they're in the right position on our team, but then also the difference between being a leader and being a manager and how do you delineate those? And just because you are a good leader does not mean you're good at managing people and vice versa.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I would say that the two phases to address the military part is my job in the military, particularly for one particular deployment, was very difficult. It was 7 12-hour days of digging holes in the desert, putting in pipe and pulling miles of cable through it from like inside manholes. Very gruesome type work. And so I was doing a job I didn't pick. I was not able to quit and I was doing it in a very bad environment. And I was doing it with people that not only did I not pick, but a lot of us didn't get along, especially at first. And so that experience where you can't quit, there's nowhere to go. You literally will go to jail if you, I mean, not that I was even close to that, but you could hypothetically go to jail for trying to quit. And you make it work. And once you've done that, it opens your eyes to sort of what's possible when we're all in the same boat rowing together, if that makes sense. And then from the perspective of now getting out of the military and starting a CrossFit gym, now I get to choose based on my core values and who I want in the room. And so I've always found more success drafting talent than trading for it. And what I mean by that is I found way more success tapping someone on the shoulder who I know is a culture and core value fit, and then teaching them how to do the dance moves, right? As opposed to reaching out and saying, who's the best blank in the blank and I'll pay you X. You know, that's just never been exciting for me. I'm a big believer in investing in the people around me, and I'm doing it right now with my minimal staff that I do have. And I probably will work with them until either they start their own business or decide to move on.
Nice. Now, speaking of core values, I also think it's really important to work with people who align with your values. So what are some of your core values and how do you find that right fit?
Yeah, so that's a great question. First of all, I help people do core values. That's a big part of what I do, but core values changed my life. At the recommendation of a mentor and super successful, very good friend of mine, I really dialed in about 7 years into the business. I dialed in my core values finally, not the ones that we borrowed from McDonald's and Nike and Apple, but the ones that actually were me. And so my Spear and Clover logo represents 2 of my core values, which are the military mindset, which is what I got from being in the military. That's discipline and hard work and showing up on time and taking responsibility. And the one that I was born with, which is the spirit of the puppy. And so the spirit of the puppy is like high energy, loves to try new things, loves to meet new people. If you walk in the room and I'm in the back of it, I'm running towards you to give you a big hug. And it's the combination of those 2 things that sort of makes me me. And then I have a couple other core values that describe how I work with others and how I communicate and what motivates me to keep moving forward. But for me, what I've found is that combination of not just hard charging towards our goals, but also taking time to enjoy life as it comes to us and really enjoy the process and try new things and have hobbies. I can tell right away if I'm going to get along with somebody in a professional environment. If they're both spirit of the puppy and military of the mindset, I think we're going to be good.
Very nice. And for those of you who are listening to this instead of watching it on YouTube, you can't see Jason's tattoo of his logo and his hat that really, I mean, you're literally wearing your core values
I have 2 tattoos and they're both of logos that I made for companies that are very close to me. So there's a story there. So I had my core values done for a while, spirit of the puppy, military mindset, and then the other 3 that, for the purposes of brevity, I'll leave out. And one of the things I do a couple years later after that, I go on these ruck marches every week with my dogs. I have these 2 Australian Shepherds. There I am. I'm doing 11 miles through the dunes. I live here in the Indiana dunes, and I've got a 40-pound pack on my back and I've got a 40-pound log on my shoulder, and I'm hoofing. I'm hard charging towards my goal. We did 11 miles without putting that log down. And I'm military mindset. I'm focused on my goal. And the dogs are running out into the woods, and then they come back and check on me. And then they're running out into the woods. They're coming back and checking on me. And so if I did 11 miles, they did 22 easy, right? And they're having the time of their lives. And it just occurred to me that at my best, I'm not one or the other. It's both. And so that's where the spear and clover came from. It was a personal concept and a tattoo for many years before it was ever a business, but it's definitely something that will end up on my tombstone, I'm sure.
Very cool. I love that. Now, do you work with your wife? Does she work in your businesses? Yeah.
She does. She's worked for 4 or 5 of my businesses over the years. She currently has a small role. She manages my Facebook group. I have a free group for entrepreneurs, and she's the one that welcomes them and makes sure they find the right trainings and adds a little bit of, she keeps it a friendly, warm environment instead of me just, dropping the hammer on some marketing training or something.
And was there any transition going from, home life to then having to put on more like a business mentality in your work together, or has that not been an issue?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I became a better leader when I hired my wife, because I had the gym. We were growing very rapidly, and we had a very big team for a CrossFit gym. And at that time, we're bringing on something like 70 or 80 new people every single month. And so just really rocking. And she was currently a fitness coordinator at a retirement home in Chicago, a really, really nice one. She had this really great gig, but she saw me living the entrepreneur's life and starting to see this benefit. And I was getting ready to maybe hire somebody to be our welcoming committee and our party planner and all this other stuff. And so when I brought her on, I just started with this. I was like, okay, what is the time frame I see my relationship with my wife? Well, it's infinite. I want to die being in love with and married to my wife, Donna. And so on a long enough timeline, there's just no obstacle that doesn't represent a pebble that you can easily step over. And so I was like, every single thing that comes up, because we're on an infinite timeline, I'm just going to not really worry about it. We're going to solve it. We're not going to let emotion get involved. And we also sort of strategically keep a little bit of buffer between us, especially at that time where I'm not like reliant on her to get it done right now. And she's not, reliant on me to butt heads when we disagree. But then I was like, well, that's better. Why don't I just manage everybody that way? And so all of a sudden I started to treat everybody at the business as if we're on an infinite timeline. And I think we've really reaped the benefits there.
Very cool. So when somebody works with you, do you primarily work with them one-on-one, in groups? Do you do workshops?
Yeah, we do all sorts of stuff. So we do have a free group. And the idea of the free group is I want to be able to give you enough real plug and play stuff that you can grow your business by 25 grand a month. Because what I do is I help people go from 6 figures a year to 6 figures a month. And we do that through a variety of different methods. And so we do have a program that is one-on-one for 12 weeks. We also have a mastermind that meets every single weekend or every single Friday. And that's a large group where we have a subject matter expert, and then we do small group mastermind breakout sessions. So we kind of air, land, and see it. I believe, and I learned this from Scott Ferguson, I believe in the plus equals minus personal development model. So plus, you should always have a mentor who's further down the path than you, that's kind of giving you help and compressing your time to success. Equals, you should always be engaged with peers that are in similar struggles to you and helping each other solve problems. And then minus, you absolutely should be reaching back on the path and helping those folks that are further behind you to level themselves up.
I love that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've heard that description in that way.
Yeah. Shout out to Fergie.
Yeah,
he's
definitely.
crushing it. Time to shine today. Yeah, he's great.
Amazing. Now, okay, this is a more random question perhaps, but do you have a lot of listeners who are interested in hearing about mindset and shifts and all of that stuff? And so I know one of the questions that you are always happy to answer, Liz, was how can plant medicine and psychedelics help me as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think psychedelics represent a small part of my day-to-day life, as in not any part of my day-to-day life, but a massive part of my personal development and understanding of who I am and sort of how I fit into the universe. And so what I would say is, and I'm happy to address, I'll talk about anything you want to on this topic, but to be clear, like there's so much that I would want some clarity with what your interest is. But, the best way to describe it is, as an entrepreneur, it is incumbent upon us, if we want to be successful, to sort of put down our ego and be able to see things as they really are.
Mm-hmm.
And so while some things we call drugs make you more than yourself, maybe that's cocaine. I don't know. I've never done it. Adderall, stuff like that. And some drugs that we would call, some substances we would call drugs make you less than yourself. Maybe that's alcohol or marijuana or something like that. I think typically psychedelics, in my experience and that of the folks that I, trust and talk to about these things, really don't make you more or less of anything. They remove the veneer that is over life. And so it allows you to see things as they actually are. And a lot of times in day-to-day life, it's difficult to put down your ego and see things as they really are.
Mm-hmm.
And so it helps to give you a little jostle and step next to your ego so you can see, oh, wow, I'm not even mad at her anymore. Why have I carried that little torch? Or like, how come I like being fit and having energy? How come I keep poisoning myself with food? Like, just like it just reveals things that you maybe take for granted and that your ego has sort of compartmentalized in such a way because you can't deal with all of the things that confront you on a daily basis. Your ego is designed to sort of package those things and compartmentalize them so you can get through life. If I was looking at a fork every time I picked it up, realizing it was a pitchfork for dead flesh, like that'd be weird. And so you can't, you just go like, oh, it's fork, move on. Like, that's a computer. It works. And the speed of light is connecting you and I right now. And if you're on psychedelics, you're aware of that. And right now it would ruin this conversation if we dwelled on the fact that space age technology is allowing us to talk in real time,
Yeah. We haven't really had a dive into this topic on the podcast, but you read stories about Silicon Valley. You hear about how people invented so much technology, and many times it was because they were using plant medicine, psychedelics, to exactly what you're saying, to expand their mind, be able to see beyond the problem that they're trying to solve, the equation they're trying to solve right in front of them, and be able to take it a step further. And there's also been so many studies recently about also mental health and how plant medicines and psychedelics can help with people's mental health and just ability to really be present in the here and now, right? So
yeah, and I can give you a perfect example of that, and I'll try to make it as brief as I can. But about once a month, I go into a float tank. So I go into a sensory deprivation tank and I'll float. And it's not that uncommon for me to experience psychedelics while I do. And so one day this was years ago at the gym, we were growing very quickly. And I had this car jam of new people, of experienced people and coaches. And so the coaches were telling me that they can't handle all these new people. And the old experienced people knew what they were doing. And every time somebody new is there, they have to teach them all this stuff. And then the experienced people were like, hey, we're so happy to see you guys succeeding, but we don't need to learn how to do a pull-up today every single day. And then the new people are like, hey, this place is amazing. We love this tribe that you've built, but we're so scared and nervous. And all in one moment, it was like a problem that I had been playing around with a lot. And all in one moment, I was like, hey, idiot, they're all asking you the exact same thing and you're just not listening. And it was like, oh, we're going to make a separate class where they can go in there for as long as they need. And we're going to teach them fundamentals. And then when they're ready, they can take a quick test with any coach that they want. And they move into the regular population of class. And that's simply to say, like, there's so many times where the answer was literally right in front of me, where me was the problem. And so sometimes you need to set down me in order to see the solution.
Yeah. You can't see the forest through the trees kind of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are some ways, if you have any quick tips, tricks for entrepreneurs to be able to fill their days with work that gives them energy that also has a direct effect on their business? And how do you cut out the noise of everything else that you have to do?
I'm going to start with the end of that. So I always like to say swimming is a lot easier than drowning. And so if you're listening to this and you're not getting where you want to go, the answer isn't doing what you're doing now harder. Okay. That's number one. So if you feel like you're working as hard as you can and you're not getting where you're going, you need to stop what you're doing and reconsider your approach. That's like the best thing I can give anybody because it's just true in life. And so the second thing is you probably already know what you should be doing. Anytime you say I should, anything that comes after that, just do that, because the things that we don't do are the things that we should do. If you really want to do something, you do it, unless you have some very real thing that's barring you. I can't buy a Lamborghini today or whatever. Obviously there's a reason for that. And then finally, I would say seek out mentorship from people that sound like they're living a life that you would want to live, that have done the thing that you're struggling with. Because so often I think people just don't even open their minds to that. And it's just been so rewarding to me to not only engage with mentorship, but also to then be a mentor and learn things to so much deeper of a level. I like to think of like knowledge as like my ability to do something. But like when I teach it, I have to look at it at so many different angles. I think that's wisdom, right? Like it's like the ability to look at the same thing thing in like so many different ways because you've had to teach it or you've tried it a million different ways. And so if you're somebody who is going to get to the top of the mountain, just consider that you might be able to compress the time it takes to get there by working with somebody who's maybe been there before.
Yeah, I think that is really important. As entrepreneurs or small businesses, we think that's such a big investment. I don't want to invest time in that kind of mentorship or coach. And I can tell you from my own experience, having people as sounding boards makes the biggest difference. Finding the right mentors, finding the right coaches, and having multiple even. Because one might be helping you with your mindset for life. It also affects your business, but another one might be focused on your business and systems and processes like we were talking about. They can be the same person, but they might not be. And you might have different things that you need to work on with them, with each one individually.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have a few different coaches right now. I have one for podcasting. I have one for, sales and marketing stuff. I recently had a words coach. Shout out to Mark England and Lifted Coaches. They help you with it's sort of like NLP, but it's better than NLP. Mark, if you hear this, I'm sorry.
Yeah, NLP. I mean, that takes me back to the conversation about plant medicines and psychedelics. There's so many techniques people use. I listen to subliminals as I'm going to sleep. I like EFT, do self-help books on Audible, and I'm in a book group where we listen to episodes on each chapter as we're reading the book or listening to it. And then there's a whole community. So I think the more techniques you can integrate, the better, because I agree, like having that, being able to take out the ego and look at things from a different perspective or know, I have this block, I need to work on this and figure out what's the underlying root issue and cause. So that I can solve it, because then I'll be a better human. I'll be a better mom. I'll be a better partner. I'll be better at my volunteer work. I'll be better at work and all the things.
I could not possibly agree more with you. That was perfectly said.
Oh, thank you. So you have a new program called All-Star AI. What's that about?
Yes, two things. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, I dive deep on things that interest me. And when ChatGPT launched, I was on it that day. I mean, I've been on it multiple times. And the second day that I used it, I gave myself a challenge. I said, I'm going to make a course in one day. It was like a meta project or a muse project. So I was like, what can I do? I just want to expand myself into the vessel. And so in one day, I decided to make a course on ChatGPT about how to make courses using ChatGPT. So it's just like this kind of infinite loop.
That's so meta.
It's so meta, right? And so from 8 a.m. until 9 p.m., I literally conceived, designed, created bullets and slides, and then created a script and filmed it, edited it, put a landing page together and released it all in one day. And I only edited using a delete key. So I literally used prompts. And so during that time, I recorded all of my prompts. And so you can go and watch. You can see exactly what I did. You can watch me do it. You can see me deleting stuff. But I didn't create anything other than the concept. And then ChatGPT did the rest. This was super cool. This was late November, early December. And I gave that away for free. But after a while, when I actually was focused on the business, that's not actually useful for the people that I serve. It's more of a muse project for me. And so All-Star AI 2.0 is specifically the areas of the business that a coach, consultant, or solopreneur can use ChatGPT, as well as demonstrations, as well as a case study where I go through each of those for a real business that we were launching in 2020. And that is free. And the reason I give that away for free is not because I'm an AI guru, because I'm certainly not, but mostly because the people that I speak to that are struggling to get out of that like $5,000 to $10,000 a month in their business, getting up to 20 or 25,000 in their business, it's because they're so stuck in the weeds with the tactical day-to-day fires. And so I said, well, great. Let's show them, let's give them the keys to lowering the pressure and noise in their business. And then we can roll our sleeves up and get to work once you get that extra $25,000 a month. And so the beauty of what I'm trying to offer to people, if they take me up on it, is that I'll tell you exactly how to make $25,000 a month, because the people that I work with, I take from that to $100,000 a month. And we really can't even get into that until you've learned how to make some money and have proof of concept.
Interesting. So how would somebody sign up for that? Go to your website? Is there a special link that they need to have?
Yeah. If you just request to join my free Facebook group, it's called the Dynasty Builders Group. My wife, Donna, will welcome you in and we'll give you access to the All-Star AI course, as well as I'm putting in trainings every single day in there. Again, I am treating this as if that were a paid job to get people to $25,000 a month. So I'm giving away the whole keys to the car at that point, and then scaling. That's where I'm most interested. I stopped working for money in 2018. I only work for interest and trying to help people. And my interest is trying to help people get to $100,000 a month. So, yeah.
Jason, is there anything we haven't covered today that you want to leave our audience with?
No, other than that you're doing a terrific job. And so if they're still listening, it's because they like your show. So they should probably like, subscribe, and share it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the plug. We'll also put your show in the show notes and your Facebook group and everything else so that people know how to reach you. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
Not really. I'm sure I could, but I don't in the moment. I would say learn to love struggle, because struggle is the only thing that will make you who you want to be. Nobody gets better from the easy stuff. No good story has ever gone according to plan. Literally no good story you've ever heard has gone the way it was supposed to. And so, learn to love the struggle and your competitors and anybody that tears you down. Those are the things that will make you ultimately great if you are going to be great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was a really delightful conversation today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you to our audience for coming to another episode of Your Brand Amplified. Again, our guest today was Jason Skeesick, and we'll have all of his information and his podcast. So give that a listen, join his Facebook group, and get all the information you need to improve your business exponentially. And with that, I will be back again in another few days. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.